Hey Jen, welcome to When Spirit Talks.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. I'm so happy to have you, another Reiki person. So I'm
Mhm.
excited. And today we're going to be chatting a lot about self-love. And it's such an amazing and important topic. So I'm so excited to hear how you started your journey and how you became a self-love coach.
Okay. Well, yeah, let me dive right in. My story kind of began when I was younger. I did experience a lot of childhood trauma. Unfortunately, my father passed away when I was younger. And after that, my mother couldn't take care of me and my brother full time. So we were sent to live in multiple different people's homes, like multiple family members that lived in different states. So we were traveling and living in different homes, kind of like orphans almost. And some of the family members were unconditionally loving and gave us stability and security for a few months at a time. And some were physically and mentally abusive. So it was definitely confusing. It was definitely a hard time. I felt really abandoned on multiple levels by not only my father passing away, but my mother, who couldn't raise us. And I felt a really low self-worth because I kind of didn't understand, like, why am I being treated this way? Am I not, like, what's wrong with me? Like, what's going on? So I definitely took that mentality with me. There was a lot of depression, a lot of anger, and a lot of low self-worth. And I grew up in Miami, so I decided to numb it with alcohol, decided to numb it with partying, decided to numb it with anything and everything in between. And it was great for a while, but that's just putting a band-aid over a really, really infected wound. And I decided in my mid 20s that I did not want to live like that anymore. That I was like, okay, there's two ways that, like, where life can take me. Either life can take me and continue down this rabbit hole and just be miserable and depressed for the rest of my life, or I can try to find some other solution. So at this point in my life, I decided I am going to try some new things that I haven't tried before in the past. I'm going to tap into spirituality and see what that brings me. So I started with yoga, and it was such a beautiful tool, and it helped me get connected with my mind, body, and spirit. And I absolutely loved it, especially yin yoga, because I was able to really, really kind of get deep and sit in those uncomfortable moments and be present with myself. And that's something that I've never done before. Um, and then I tried meditation, and meditation was definitely challenging, especially with somebody that has their mind going 24/7. But I eventually became used to it and comfortable with it. And then I started, using crystals and essential oils and reading spirituality books. And then that's when somebody introduced me to Reiki. And I didn't know what it was, but I was open to try because I was definitely on the spiritual journey. And for the first time in my life, I actually went and I felt vulnerable. And I never felt that before. My family are immigrants, so we don't really share our emotions. And it's kind of taboo. Like, we keep our problems to ourselves. So if we have a problem, we could talk to each other, but we don't share it outside the family. So, therapy wasn't really an option, even though I did try it. But for the first time, I actually felt something. I actually cried, and I never really cried and processed my emotions like that before. So I was able to really, really feel deeper. So for the next, like, 6 months to a year, I decided to continue going to Reiki circles and working one-on-one with the Reiki teacher and really diving in and focusing on self-love. So I worked with the self-love coach as well. And I will tell you that it literally, between the both of those, it transformed my life. I literally went from being depressed, angry, and even suicidal. I don't really share that very often, but I went from that to actually loving my life and loving who I am as a person, and really realizing that I am worthy of everything I desire. So that's what led me to my journey here. I wanted to share that with other people because I know how transformative it was for my life.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is such a powerful story. And yeah, I'm sure it was so difficult to go through that, but I love how you were able to find something to kind of transform all of that and like let you love you. So that is amazing.
Mhm. Thank
And
you.
Why do you feel like self-love is so important?
Well, I really, really feel like self-love is so important because if you don't have the capability to love yourself, you are incapable of loving anyone else. And I know that some people may be like, well, that's not true. When in reality, it is. It's kind of a twofold thing right there. Like if you only have so much love that you give yourself, that's the capacity of what you can give love. So if you love yourself fully, the flaws and all, you're able to, you know what love looks like because you've experienced it. So you're able to give that type of love.
Yeah, I think giving love is really tied into that self-love.
Mhm.
But for me, it was kind of like the opposite. So I was able to give, but I wasn't able to receive, or I felt really uncomfortable with
Mhm.
receiving love.
Okay,
Like something
yeah.
as simple as compliments, right? Like to this day, instead of like being like, oh, if someone says something like, oh, I like your shirt, instead of being like, oh, I got it at Old Navy. Just say thank you. I wasn't able to like receive. And I feel like it's tough because once you actually begin to love yourself, it's like you open that two-way street with giving and receiving. And I feel like you're that like midpoint. So if like giving is on your right and receiving love is on your left, it's like you're in the middle and you are basically opening up to both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said the receiving part too. Because like that is another part of it. And it is really, really difficult to receive love as well. Because in the back of your mind, if you don't fully love yourself, you're always like, do they really love me? You're like self-doubting it almost.
Yeah, it's like you need that self-doubt is constantly in the back of your mind. And then it's like, yeah, is this true? Do I deserve it? No, no, no. So yeah, it's so,
Like,
so important. Do you find that there's something that people typically struggle with the most when they're working on enhancing that self-love?
what I feel like people struggle with a lot is boundary setting. And maybe they're good at setting boundaries in work, but not with friends and family. Boundaries are so important because it really honors us and what we can take on and what we can do. And there's so many different components to boundaries. Like it's not just with, you know, with a friend or a family member. It could also be boundaries in your relationships, boundaries with work, boundaries with your time, and even boundaries with yourself. So I really feel like that's an underrated thing that a lot of people struggle with.
Mhm. Boundaries are tough, and I feel like the people who are quieter, who don't love themselves or aren't as feeling as worthy, it definitely is harder to set those because it's like you're constantly worrying about the other people and making sure that the other people love you, because you don't
Exactly.
have that internal peace. And yeah, it's difficult when you're dealing, especially with people where you come into contact with them on a day-to-day basis. So like typically for me, if something happened, I would just cut you out like, okay, bye-bye. I don't have to worry about you anymore. And that was
Mhm.
me setting that boundary. But you can't do that in certain circumstances, right? Like at
Right.
work, you can't do that.
Yeah,
At
I
home,
really
you
feel
can't
you
do
wish,
that.
right?
Yeah, there's certain times where you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to set these boundaries? Because the way I was used to setting them doesn't fly in this setting. And it was funny too, because once my daughter came along, it was funny because once you have a child, right, you have that like unconditional love, but you also get like triggered is a big word, but they find a way to bring up these emotions where you're like, so frustrated or annoyed, but it's funny because you can't run away from them and that like love piece is always there. So raising my daughter has really helped me move away from like cutting people out as quickly as I would have because you're on this journey where you have to deal with things in a different way and set different types of boundaries. So I love how you brought up boundaries because it's so so important. Do you have a favorite tip to cultivate self-love?
My favorite tip to like really create and cultivate self-love is to honor where you are right now in this moment And it could be, you could be going through the motions and just, really angry, really frustrated, or whatever it may be. Just allow yourself to have those emotions and those feelings, but do not dwell on that, especially if it's a negative emotion. Again, it's okay to have those emotions because we're human and we don't want to keep it inside, because then that's just pent up and we're just putting Band-Aid over that. We really want to be able to release those emotions, but then also be able to know when, okay, and I've had my emotions come out, like I've had my little hissy fit or whatever, but now I am going to try to kind of reroute that. And the best way to do that is to really bring it back to gratitude. I always like to think of 3 things that I'm grateful for, especially in that moment. I may be having a hard time, but what are 3 things I'm grateful for? And be very specific. You could just say, oh, I'm grateful for my house. Why are you grateful for your house? What does it offer you? What does it give you? How does it make you feel? So, allow yourself to have those emotions. Don't dwell on those emotions. Like, give yourself an afternoon if you need it, or a few hours, but don't, take it days and days and days. But then also bring it back to gratitude.
The question you posed about showing gratitude and asking why are you grateful for that, that's really cool, because most of the time you think about like, yes, I'm grateful for this and this and this,
Mhm.
but I know I don't typically say, well, why? So that's a great question to start asking. And I also like the fact that you said, yes, feel your emotions, don't let them stay in your body, because that never does any harm, never does any good.
I know.
And it's funny because um, working with people energetically, I'm sure you see it too, where I've had people that I just start working with, and there's so many stored emotions in their body. And half the time they're not even aware of it because they've shoved it down so deep, or it's such a difficult moment or emotion to deal with. But it really does impact us. And then the cycles that you talked about with really, getting stuck in them, like getting stuck in those emotions that don't feel the best, it's really, really important to do that, because I used to do that myself, where either something would happen or someone would say something to me, or I just, think a negative thought about myself, and I would get stuck on it. And it would literally ruin my entire day for months. And, like, it's
Right.
so hard to get out of that cycle, because it's just one of those things where you could like jump down the rabbit hole,
Mhm.
and it's so hard. But stopping that and just being like, okay, I'm giving myself 5 minutes to really feel this. And then after that, it's done. Like my time focusing on that is done, and I'm gonna focus on that gratitude piece. So thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah.
I know you're a big journaler too. So
Yeah.
why do you love journaling, and how do you incorporate that into your self-love practice?
Well, I've always loved writing ever since I was little. So journaling just came natural to me. And I know that journaling's not for everyone, or some people may be new to it. I love journaling because it allows me to process my emotions in a different way. Like when we like think about something, it's like a loop in our head. It keeps going and going and going and going, and we're just reliving a memory or reliving, our thoughts or something. But when we get it out on paper, that's one way that we can really release what is inside of us. So like if you are having a bad day, a great thing to do is something I like to call a write and release, where you write down everything that's bugging you and bothering you, and your fears and doubts and whatever it may be, and then you either burn it, or you can like rip it into 1,000 different pieces and stuff, and throw it out. And then that's one really good way to just release it. So when you're either burning it or ripping it, you're like watching those feelings and those thoughts just go away. So
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why I really love journaling. But journaling is also really great at goal setting and writing down what we want and what we desire, and getting oddly specific about what we're trying to manifest and cultivate. And that's what I really love about journaling. And how I incorporate journaling is kind of pretty much whatever I just said was like, I write to get out my pent up emotions. I write to cultivate and to goal set. I'm a Capricorn, so I'm a huge goal setter. And I love to crush my goals. So it's really good for me to go back and see my goals written out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally just accomplished all of those. So it's really exciting. So I really love, especially like goal setting, things I'm trying to manifest and things like that too. So
Oh, let's talk about manifesting
yeah,
and the
absolutely.
law of attraction. Tell us
Yeah.
more.
So the law of attraction, it's pretty much what we're trying to do is trying to attract what we desire. But the thing is, a lot of people don't realize is you attract what you are, not what you want. So you're going to attract at the vibration that you currently are. So if you are constantly in that negative mindset, constantly in that negative frame of thinking and that negative low vibration, that's what you're going to attract. You can, like if you're like, oh, I really want to attract this new job and stuff, but then you're like thinking all the what ifs and oh my gosh, this is not going to work. Then you're not going to attract that new job, or you're going to get really, really crappy offers or something, because that's the energy that you're putting out there. So law of attraction is pretty much energy. It's all universal energy. It's energy within us. It's everything like that. So it's about that vibration. So if you are trying to attract something, it's better to attract it from a higher vibrational, because that means you're going to attract higher vibrational things. So again, if you're trying to attract a new job, you want to kind of allow yourself to be in a higher vibrational. So allow yourself to be excited about the potential of a new job. And then you're going to get those, new job offers. But obviously, there is no attraction without action, though. So it's kind of a two-step thing. So it's about, getting to that vibration that you want to attract, but also putting in the action. You can't just be like, I want to attract a new job, and then, a new dog's going to fall in your lap. Sometimes that happens, and that's wonderful. But sometimes you do got to put in the work, and you do got to look on, LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever, whatever source you like to look at. And sometimes it's about networking and finding the right people. But when you're vibrating at that higher frequency, it happens a lot quicker and it happens a lot easier too.
Hmm. When you were talking, it reminded me of when we're talking about energy and attracting,
Mhm.
based on our frequency, it's like those days, we all have them when everything is going wrong. Like you wake
Yeah,
up,
right.
right? And something sets you off, and then literally all day, like it could be the people you meet or situations at work. Like it's just one of those days where you're like, everything is so stressful, nothing's working out. And it's like you get stuck in that energy pattern. And then
Mhm.
often what happens is then you go to sleep and you wake up the next day and like your body's had time to process all of that energy. And you wake up and the next day, is so much better because now all of that energy, all that negative frequency has leveled a little bit. But yeah, that's what I thought of was like, yeah, those days where just everything is going wrong.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah, yeah. What is one thing listeners can do right now to start attracting exactly what they want?
So what you can do is get very, very specific about what you want. So I know I mentioned attracting a new job. So if you're attracting a new job, just don't just like, journal or write or meditate and say, oh, I want a new job. Be specific. What does this job have? What's the salary range? What benefits do they offer? What are the type of people in the environment? So get very, very specific, because if you are trying to attract a new job, and you're just like, oh, I want to attract a new job in healthcare. You may get a few offers and people reaching out that are in healthcare, but maybe you're like, oh, that's not what I'm looking for. It's because you haven't told the universe what you're looking for specifically. So get as specific as you can, but also leave a little room for like wiggle room. Don't say it has to be this, it has to be like, I want this or better. So leave it up to the universe to decide, to allow the stars to align how they may. Like maybe you may even get a better job offer than you were anticipating in the first place. So get very specific, but leave it open for something better.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Now we're
Sure.
going to dive into the spirit segment.
Okay.
So I'd love to know what's one thing you always include in your daily routine that helps you stay grounded and balanced that might help other people do the same?
One thing I always use or bring with me, wear or whatever, is crystals. I'm wearing howlite right now. I'm in my office and I've got onyx, I've got was it red jasper. I've got like a bunch of different things. So I always include crystals with me because they have different energy frequencies. It's another great way to raise your vibe. And I like to keep them on my person because it connects with my energy the best, but then also keeping them in like my bag, my car, my office, my room, and things like that. So I'm always using crystals or making sure crystals are around me.
I love crystals too. I always same. I have one usually on my body at all times, in
Yeah.
my car, in my like everywhere.
Mhm.
Just make sure to cleanse them because they do absorb. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
that's so so important.
Yeah.
And I know also you had mentioned essential oils earlier. What is
Mhm.
your favorite one?
Okay. So I actually have three, if that's okay.
Hmm.
So I love rose essential oil because it's one of the highest frequencies along with frankincense. They're one of the highest frequency vibrational oils. So if you put that on, your vibrations are already going to be raising. But I love the smell of it because it's very feminine. It connects with my feminine energy. And I really love that. I really love sandalwood as well. Sandalwood is a great earthy, grounding, masculine type of scent. However, it is very grounded and it comes from like a healthy masculine and not like an overbearing masculine energy. So that's a really great way if I want to just like rebalance myself and recenter myself. And then I also love lemongrass. Lemongrass gives me that energy boost. It really makes me feel excited and uplifted. That's another great essential oil to get you out of a funk, is if you want to like anything like citrusy usually will help get you out of a funk. Lemongrass just so happens to be my favorite. So I really love those three essential oils.
I do love sandalwood. That's one I
Oh
always
gosh.
literally put on right before a session.
Mhm.
And rose is funny because I have a rose hydrosol that I'm always like spraying before,
Mhm.
sometimes instead of that perfume. Um, I know you probably have so many of these, but what is your favorite story regarding your connection to spirit?
Oh, okay. So yeah, you're right. I do have a lot. But this is kind of like a continuum story. But one of the first times that I guess it was, I don't know if it was like the first time or not, but when I was going through my healing journey, I wasn't always 100% sure of my intuition. Funny enough, now that I look back, my intuition has always been spot on. It's just I didn't know how to listen to it. So as I got older and progressed more through my spiritual journey, I obviously I'm listening to my intuition more, and my intuition screams at me now. Sometimes my third eye will like tingle or even like heat up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't even have to really like tap into it. It does it automatically now. um but I would always like ask a specific question, whether it be like a relationship, like, oh my gosh, like what's the deal with what's going on with this situation. And I would sit there and meditate and really tap into it, and then I would get the answer. But then also our heart wants to like, our heart and our head are like telling us different things too. So you're like, I'm not quite sure. Like, I know this is what it's telling me and I feel really strongly about it. However, I want one more step of clarity. So sometimes I'll reach out and do like a quick 15-minute tarot reading. So I'll either book a tarot reading or even pull my own cards. And they always, and I give them very minimal, I give them breadcrumbs, like saying, hey, I'm inquiring about this. And I don't give them any more than that. I don't tell them how I'm feeling or what they're feeling or what happened. I just give them breadcrumbs, and they always come back spot on to what my intuition has told me. So I'm like, oh my God. And it gives me goosebumps because I'm like, this is kind of scary. So I've done that a few times, and there's no shame to my game. I will tell you, I probably have done that maybe once in the last year as well. So I mean, I still do it. It's just because it's kind of fun at this point. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, like how accurate am I? So I think that's when I realized I was like, okay, I have to trust that my intuition 100% because I am 100% right. And we really, really need to learn to trust our intuition because it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah, and it's so funny because when you're talking, I've had clients that book a reading, like a card reading. And again, I don't know too much, but as soon as I send it out, they're like, thank you. That was confirmation. It was what they already were thinking about, but they needed, some extra validation. But the more that that happens and the more that they do that and the more that they like realize that they were on the right track, it's
Mhm.
funny because it builds that intuition, it builds that trust. So
Oh,
yeah, that literally just happened a few days ago. So I was
oh,
like,
you
I
gave
have to
me
share
chills when you said that. I love
that.
that. I love that.
Yeah. And what is one final piece of advice you have for listeners who are trying to improve their spiritual well-being?
I always say take it one step at a time. You don't have to tackle everything. So if you are like trying to overcome something or you're trying to manifest something, take it one step at a time. You don't have to be a master at everything. Just start small. Start with, like what needs a little more love. Like really sit and focus on what needs the most love right now. Is it, healing some type of self love? Is it, setting boundaries? Is it trying to be more intuitive and gaining more clarity? Focus on what you really need the most, and then work towards that. But also don't discredit what you already do really well at. So just try to, like sit in and really find where you are right now, what you need, but don't discredit where you're really good at and what you've already accomplished and what you've done. So.
That's awesome. Now, where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
You can follow me on Instagram at ZenJen Holistic, Jen with two N's, spelled ZenJenHolistic. Sometimes I'm like, how do I spell? Because your brain's like, "Ugh." So yeah, ZenJen Holistic again with two N's. Follow me on Instagram. I have a YouTube where I post meditation videos. I post other types of videos. But you can find everything on Instagram. My website's there. My YouTube is there. Connect with me there. Send me messages. I'll be more than happy to connect with you and answer any questions you have, and just welcome you into my self-love community.
Awesome. Now, before we go, I pulled a card. Speaking of tarot, I pulled a card for you. So I'm going to share it now. Are you ready?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, here we
I
go.
was born ready.
Okay, so you got the Six of Swords. And for anyone who's not watching this and just listening, this card, so each deck has its own visual representation, but this card, there are swords on the bottom laying on the ground, and then there are swords pointing up. And as they're pointing up, they're transforming into flowers. So with this card for you and what I've gathered and taken, it's about how you overcame those difficulties in terms of your negative thought processes and what you were thinking and how you transform that into that beautiful self-love, powerful healing that is you, and how you focused on self-love and leaving all of that mental baggage behind to flourish.
Oh, it's a transformation card. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the message for everyone else is to put down the negative thinking that is holding you back, because it's time to move on so you can let go and move on to bigger and better things.
Absolutely.
So, Jen, thank you so much for coming on. I loved our chat and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.